have any questions. Yes.
What kind of progress is being made on non-surgical sterilization?
Not much. A lot of people have, you may be familiar with Julie Levy at University of Florida. She's been working on it for over 20 years. A lot of people have been working on it, and it's not been very successful for a long-term management. You may have heard there was something called Nutersol that was it was a substance injected into the testes of male animals to sterilize them, but it had a lot of really unfortunate side effects, and it just never became very useful. One thing that we do that I think has been a good way to decrease the amount of time in surgery is that oftentimes in the females we're only removing the ovaries now, particularly in cats, without any complications at all. And we have a procedure that's really, really quick for doing ovariectomies with the students. And that really speeds up the process. So there are surgical advances that have made things quicker, but at some point, you know, it still does take time, and the students are still honing their skills, and many veterinarians out in the community are going to continuing education through places like the ASPCA's Humane Alliance to get additional training, so that usually it's just that mostly people need to feel confident to speed up or confident to do smaller incisions to trying it. And when I was a new graduate, Dr. Doug Meckes, who's now the state veterinarian, is an excellent surgeon, and he was at Apex Veterinary Hospital for years. And he told me that the only problem I had as a surgeon in doing faster and smaller incisions was me. And he was right. I was my own worst enemy, and that's the same with our students. So we're really working on making them very practically trained to go out and actually perform in private practice or in spay-neuter settings.
I just have one final question. Okay, yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Ferris. I just want to go back to something you said earlier and turn it into a practical question. So if Guilford County wanted to invite you and the students out here to like set up in the community and do something for a day or whatever, would we recruit private vets to oversee the students? I got a little bit confused when you said like that the new notice that came out from the Veterinary Association, they need to have certain vets. Like, would that be our responsibility? Do you bring vets that would be overseeing them? And do you have a waiting list? Like, if we wanted you to do that in the next year, are you like booked out a year or?
So let me go, the first question is that we have to, first of all, before we do it, we have to make sure that animal control in the county where we're working or the city where we're working is on board, because it is a partnership with, we have to make sure that we're not violating any local ordinances, that we have a place to set up. We usually prefer to set up on county or municipal property just to make sure that we don't have liability issues, but we've also set up at local vet hospitals in some areas as well. And then working through our alumni, we usually recruit, or oftentimes animal control will tell us, oh, we have these veterinarians that want to partner with you, or we get recruited by veterinarians, like is the case down at Pamlico. We were recruited by veterinarians, and then we brought animal control into the conversation. So it can happen a number of different ways, but we do make sure that local veterinarians are aware of what we're doing. We give them the opportunity to come out and help us teach and train students, and it also ensures that they know that we're not trying to take their business away, and we really encourage them to bring business cards with them and try to establish some veterinary relationships and encourage people to come to their practice. And you know, I'd really like to see you with this hot spot on your dog or whatever it is, and I'd be happy to set up an appointment. And we actually did get a number of animals into various veterinary hospitals because people said, oh, I actually can't afford that. they just had not even tried to make an appointment because they were so intimidated. And so they felt then that they had this relationship with a veterinarian. We actually had that in Pamlico last weekend. We actually trapped somebody's personal pet that was 5 houses away, where the lady was feeding multiple cats in her backyard. And this guy showed up. He's pretty upset that we got his cat, but then he was really excited because his cat had a rabies vaccine, and he also had his regular cat shot, and we gave him a free microchip. And all of a sudden he's like, oh yeah, he meets the veterinarian, and she says, I want to have you come in. All of a sudden we went from somebody who moved from Michigan that didn't have a veterinary relationship, and he had a cat that was free roaming, to somebody who now has a veterinary relationship. And he was excited that he gave us a $10 donation, and for him, I think that was a pretty good donation. So from mad to pretty happy.
Thank you.
Dr. Ferris, I really do appreciate you
Yes.
coming.
Well, thank
Ever
you.
since I may have met you once down at school, I was out beside where the hospital was, and there was a lady coming out, but I swear I can't remember. It was down there on a grant that we given to North State. You know, we're really lucky to have the veterinary school here in North Carolina. It is one of the top schools in the country, and it's a young school, which makes that even more impressive.
We're pretty excited. We're number 3. We're working our way up the ladder, but we have, if not the best value, meaning that the students are paying the least amount of tuition for the best education. So we're really working hard to keep tuition affordable. That's a really huge challenge for veterinary students all over the country. But thank you. I'm glad that you weren't there with it.
Well, when I was down there, they also showed us, trying to teach us how to do a suture, and trust me, you're very fortunate that I don't suture for a living. I mean, somebody would really be in pain.
I can turn you around.
But thank you so much for coming. I have no doubt we're going to be in contact going forward as Jorge and Bev and others as plans emerge. Because they're going to talk a little bit about that actually in our next item. And you're welcome to stay if you haven't. I know you may have to drive back to Raleigh, but we.
No, I've actually been invited to dinner
Well,
after,
perfect.
so I'm
Then.
gonna stay.
Well,
if
thank
that's
you.
okay.
I'm sure then there'll be other questions after the meeting then, so you better get towards your reservation in a hurry. Our next item on the agenda is if there's any new business, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. I don't think there is from the board at this point, right? All right, so I'd like to move on to the next item, which is the community engagement initiative. We're going to keep this on the agenda as a Roman numeral because we think what we're doing here is so important, because it's a key to the work that we talked about last time. And as we evolve that planning process, it's also going to fit, I think, very well into that. And if I remember right, Jorge, Lisa's going to present this part of the meeting.
Lisa's hiding back in the corner.
Please,
You can start off.
I'll start, okay.
I'll add them.
So we,
Lisa, if you would, just come to the front so we can see.
so as you all know, I'm the community engagement manager, and we've been doing what we're calling the Gate City project. So basically what we've been doing is doing like boots on the ground, soft clothes. Hi, I'm Lisa. Hi, I'm Josie. And talking to everybody in the community, just strictly as a community engagement, which goes back to follow what Dr. Ferris was saying. You know, hey, we are asking how many dogs you have, how many cats you have, are you interested in spay neuter, free spay neuter, do you need a home rabies shot, do you need vaccinations, we get a lot of requests for food. So right now we're just engaging a certain area that we've, basically, it's a hot spot based on the GIS mapping for animal control. In this crescent, we picked the center of the crescent so we can kind of spread out in either direction to see which way it's going to take us. And it's been pretty successful. For the most part, everybody that we spoke to who answered the door, who's home during the day, are more than willing to stand there and talk to us about spay and neuter, about vaccines, about what we can do for them. They're surprised animal services, and we're not even like, hey, we're from animal control or animal services. We're here just to find out what you need and what the community is looking for. So, Josie's been very instrumental in this. She goes with me a lot, and actually she's out there quite a lot. And it's just basically talking to people just face to face. What can we do for you? And as Jorge said, with our new partnership, we can't do it all. So there are other partners out there that are more than willing to help us help the community. So for example, we did a home rabies vaccination because that's what animal control does. This gentleman does not drive. That's another issue. He has no transportation. One of our community partners, he wants to microchip his dog, which is a very large 80-pound pit bull, okay? He has a hard time controlling the dog himself, but he loves his pet, wants to keep his pet, and he knows that if the pet ever gets loose, and if it's microchipped, then animal control can bring him home, and he'll never go to the shelter. So one of our community partners are gonna work with us to go with us to give this gentleman a free microchip. We'll make sure that he's registered in our system. We'll help him register the dog himself, so everything is all up and up. So at this point, we've almost finished with the community. We're gonna go back again through the same community and re-talk to them again to find out what we're gonna bring to that community. Is it a mobile spay neuter, or is it, as Jorge said, we find out that there's 20 people there who need their animal spayed neuter but don't have the transportation? Do we figure out transport to take them in? Is it just that, hey, we're good with the spay and neuter, but we really would need like rabies and other vaccinations that we don't get from our vet because we can't afford, vet care? So that's what the next focus is with this project. And what's kind of interesting and cool too, if anybody's familiar with the pet responsibility program that goes into the 4th grade classes, one of the teachers, one of the volunteers from the pet, who's also one of our shelter volunteers, is teaching that class at a school in that zone. And so she's starting on Mondays and invited myself, and I'm gonna take Josie with me, just purely because these are the children in that area whose parents we're trying to talk to. So just continue the message that we're out there to help them, and carry that message home to them. So that's kind of where we are with the Gate City project. And it's going like very receptive, and we have had very little resistance to what we're doing out there.
Well, just a couple of comments on this. You mentioned the transportation issue. One of the things that I know Animal Control is looking at is the best way to do that, whether it's probably gonna be to set a date, collect a number of dogs, and then take them in and then bring them home, because you know transportation. One of the things Leadership Greensboro does is, one of the requirements of the class is they've gotta try to do certain basic tasks, and they've gotta do it riding our bus system. And the reason that they do that is to try to get the point across that many people simply cannot get around our city in any kind of efficient way. When you find out to get over to Cone Hospital and you're on another part, even in East Greensboro, you've gotta go downtown to get to the depot, and then you gotta turn back out. And that's not a 10-minute process. So transportation is truly everything in many of these hotspot communities. The other thing is Animal Control is looking to cut through some of the red tape on eligibility, so we're able to get these people in and make it happen, working closely again with community partners to make sure that they don't find themselves in a box because of those changes. I think that's going to be positive as well. So this is an exciting program, and it'll evolve and be modified to really work, but I think that it's essential as we particularly work both cats and dogs, but especially if we try to work on the dog side of this, to try to get us down to that 10% or less number, which is our goal.